We want to make sure this never happens again.
It has been 1 week since 30 people were shot at a South Baltimore block party. The lingering questions we have and when we could get some answers. Baltimore City now has new police districts. What you need to know about the changes that took effect today. Severe weather rolled through our area again today. Look at the damage left behind and when this weather pattern will end.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala. It has been 1 week since 30 people were shot during the Brooklyn Day block party in Brooklyn homes, killing 2 people, 20-year-old Kylas Fagbemi and 18-year-old Alaya Gonzalez. Now, police are still searching for suspects, and they believe more than one person fired, and more than a dozen guns were used. A 17-year-old is in custody in connection with the shooting, but he is not facing homicide charges. There is a $28,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. 3 victims are still hospitalized. And on Thursday, this Thursday, a city council committee will hold a hearing on the shooting and the police response to it. Now, the police response to the mass shooting is still in question, as well as why Safe Streets workers who were at the block party earlier in the day did not alert police about any potential threats. Fox 45's Vincent Hill joins us live from City Hall with a closer look at some of those questions tonight. Vincent?
Yeah, Mary, you said it, multiple shooters and multiple questions that will hopefully get answered here at City Hall coming up this week.
What was chaos a week ago in the Brooklyn Homes area of South
Instructing an officer not to go toward the crowd alone.
Platform right here. Any other units? We're coming. Foxes overhead. You're not going to the crowd by yourself.
Well, hours after the shooting, the police union tweeted saying there were only 7 officers working in the Southern District that night. Acting Commissioner Richard Worley has said he is looking into those claims. One law enforcement expert Fox 45 News spoke with says the officer shortage likely hindered police response.
When you're outnumbered, when you don't have adequate support, when you don't have literally hundreds of police officers to be able to help to protect and serve, not just the people who are in danger, but the officers themselves. The numbers of positions that are open in most local police departments is unfathomable. We can't protect and serve when our numbers are so low.
Meanwhile, the 17-year-old arrested in connection with the shooting is reigniting concerns about Maryland's juvenile justice laws. Fox 45 News has heard complaints about the laws from leaders across the state now for months. That includes the Prince George's County Executive and Police Chief, as well as the Hartford County Sheriff, and most recently, Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates. They say the laws leave police and prosecutors hands tied.
To be honest, I think it's one of the worst pieces of legislation I've ever read, because what it has done is taken the process of holding juveniles accountable away from prosecutors.
Those protections have given way to a protection of some people who have committed very heinous crimes, which, yes, that does hamper what we are doing now.
It's becoming more and more difficult to hold juveniles accountable.
Basically, a lot of things that, unfortunately, young people find themselves getting involved in, police can no longer take action.
Well, those leaders taking issue with 2 laws specifically. One of them, the Juvenile Justice Reform Act. Supporters say it is aimed at providing services to juveniles instead of lengthy sentences. It prevents children 13 and under from being charged with most crimes, though. If a child commits an adult misdemeanor, the maximum sentence is 6 months probation. If a child commits an adult felony, the maximum penalty is 1 year probation. Then there's the Child Interrogation Protection Act, which states states, law enforcement cannot speak with any child until they've spoken with an attorney. That requirement cannot be waived. Now, while those bills passed, a number of bills that would have cracked down on violent offenders were left in committee. That includes the Violent Firearms Offender Act. That would have created tougher penalties for some repeat offenders. The no bail for repeat violent act offenders also failed. So did another piece of legislation that would have made the theft of a firearm a felony. Well, now some Republicans say they need a special session to address the crime crisis.
I'll call on the Senate president as well, too. You know, we have to do something, or simply a number of legislators that do not want to see young Black individuals going to jail anymore. And I can understand where they're coming from, but they have to measure that with keeping their communities safe.
Well, Fox 45 News also pressed Senate President Bill Ferguson on whether the state needs a special session to address crime. He told us he doesn't think more laws would have stopped what happened at the Brooklyn homes. Last week, we asked you if you think the governor should call a special session to combat violent crime. 93% of those who responded said yes. We'll stay with Fox 45 News. Our commitment to you is to continue to hold elected leaders accountable for the crime crisis in Baltimore City and across the state. We will have complete coverage of Thursday's City Council hearing, both on air and online. Baltimore's new police district map is now in effect. The city adopting the new map today. Fox 45's Taylor Stewart has more on the change.
Baltimore's new police district map is the first major boundary change in over 60 years.
Baltimore Police Department also needed to do this. They hadn't done this, I think, since 1959. And obviously, there's a reality of a change in population and a change also in the size of the police department.
These new boundaries are meant to balance resources and improve response times. It positions officers in areas where the highest calls for service come in. Each district still will remain short officers, which law enforcement expert Tyrone Powers says is cause for concern, requiring more flexibility for a department that is already spread thin.
Now, redistricting does not mean that police officers cannot respond from anywhere in the city. And as we indicated on previous conversations, you still have the force multipliers in place, where other agencies are now becoming more actively involved, mainly the Sheriff's Department.
Acting Commissioner Richard Worley admits it does not address the department's staffing crisis. He says they'll have to make some adjustments along the way.
We want to continue to look at calls for services and add our constants on how many officers each shift needs.
As the department tries to fill over 400 vacancies amid a spike in summer crime. Taylor Stewart, Fox 45 News.
Well, you can find the new police district map on our website, foxbaltimore.com. Oh, my goodness, severe weather rolled through our area again this afternoon. You can see the rain and wind in Owings Mills on the top left. On the top right, Fells Point saw a little flooding this afternoon. Bottom left, Ellicott City, where police made residents move their cars off Main Street to prepare for the potential of flooding. Fortunately, nothing too bad there. The worst of the storms, though, happened north of Baltimore City, where we had lots of reports of trees fallen. These pictures are from Fallston, where authorities say a tree fell on a car. 2 people were inside. Both were taken to the hospital. Conditions not known right now. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers. It was wild out there today, Jonathan.
Yeah, and certainly prayers for those folks. A lot of deaths, unfortunately, do occur in cars with trees coming down on them when we talk wind damage. So that's why it's so important that you heed those warnings with those severe weather warnings, not only flood warnings, but also the severe thunderstorm warnings. And in fact, there's that damage report from Fallston earlier on today, and that was not the only one. Some more right around the Moncton area and Jarrettsville, also some trees down here, and then also more up towards the Pennsylvania line. You take a look to the north, that's where they got all the rain today. They had up to 8 inches of rain, some spots even more than that over portions of New York. Devastating flash flooding. Around here, though, maybe a stray shower tonight, drier air moving in. I'm going to let you know when we have our next risk of showers and storms coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Jonathan, thanks. Another mass shooting in Baltimore this weekend. How many the city has seen this year and how it compares to other parts of the country.
Republican lawmakers are pushing for answers on what they see as lapses in security at the White House. I'm Christine Frizzell with a growing list of questions after cocaine was found there.
Baltimore City saw another mass shooting this weekend. 5 people were shot along Greenmount Avenue in East Baltimore. 2 were killed. Another victim is in critical condition. 1 other person was killed in a separate shooting in Northeast Baltimore last night, and a 17-year-old survived multiple gunshots early this morning. In total, 3 people lost their lives to violence this weekend. 4 others were hurt. Now, this weekend's mass shooting marks the 10th the city has seen so far this year. 63 people have been hurt in those shootings. Those 10 shootings, 9 have been killed. Philadelphia and Chicago are the only other cities in the nation that have seen more mass shootings this year, with 16 and 11, respectively. Former federal prosecutor Thuroo Vignarajah says city and state leaders need to step up and take responsibility for the violence.
Every time you hear a local leader say, oh, this is a gun violence problem across the country, what they're saying is, it's not really my fault. It's not really my responsibility to do something about it.
Well, the latest mass shooting in the nation happened in Cleveland this morning. Police say a gunman opened fire on a crowd of people, leaving 9 hurt. At least 1 is in critical condition. Investigators say it is not clear what sparked the violence. On Saturday, a separate shooting in New York City left an elderly man dead, 3 others hurt after police say a man on a scooter went on a random shooting spree through multiple boroughs before he was taken into custody. The nationwide violence has many on edge.
You have to have your eyes well open, looking at all sides, because at any minute you could be hit by a stray bullet.
It's very scary, that's all I can say. I mean, even there's nothing I can do, probably.
Experts say 2023 is one of the most violent years on record. The Gun Violence Archive reports nearly 400 mass shootings nationwide this year, taking the lives of more than 22,000 Americans. Taking a live look at the White House as authorities continue to investigate who may have dropped a bag of cocaine in the building. So far, there are no suspects. In the absence of answers, more questions from lawmakers on Capitol Hill and candidates on the campaign trail. National correspondent Christine Frizzau has the story.
At the White House, a small bag of cocaine prompting big questions about who brought it and how it was dropped at a location near where visitors store belongings, not far from the Situation Room, which has been under construction for months.
The only people coming in and going out of the sit room in this period have been workers who are getting it ready to go.
Meanwhile, some GOP presidential candidates have suggested it may have belonged to the president's son, who previously struggled with drug addiction.
The reason that the White House won't say they're going to prosecute is because they know it might be Hunter.
Reporters, asked if it could have belonged to members of the Biden family, met with this response.
They were not here Friday, they were not here Saturday, they were not here Sunday, they were not even here Monday. They came back on Tuesday. So to ask that question is actually incredibly irresponsible.
The Biden family, it appears, was at the White House on Friday, seen in this video departing that day for Camp David. Among the questions, the date the cocaine could have been left, the Secret Service vowing to try to find answers, also planning to fingerprint and check surveillance footage. Republicans, Senator Tom Cotton and Congressman James Comer, each sending letters to the U.S. Secret Service, seeking answers to broader questions about security at the White House, calling the presence of illegal drugs unacceptable and a shameful moment in the White House's history. The Secret Service has acknowledged they've received these communications and will respond appropriately, but also states this is still an open and active investigation. I'm Christine Frizzau reporting.
Well, we kind of dodged a bullet today, although, yes, we did have some severe weather, and yes, we did have some flood warnings earlier. No reported flooding around here, and, well, the good news is for now, the radar is fairly clear and clean. There's some stuff that's out to the west that still may try to get through later on tonight. We still have a chance of a stray shower in the forecast. And then there's this stuff that's off to our north and our northeast. That's what caused all kinds of flooding across, actually not too far from where I grew up, the home of Army, West Point, New York, Highland Falls, New York, all those areas in Orange County. That's my home county, New York, seeing up to 5 to 10 plus inches of rain. And even now still up toward Lake Champlain, they are under a high risk of excessive rainfall for the first time in their history. That's the type of stuff you usually see down around the Gulf Coast, but the first time in their history through tomorrow. So could still have some more deadly flooding on the way. And I mean, man, it just missed us. I'll tell you, those folks at Ellicott City, they were ready for this potential, and that's why we had a whole bunch of emergency management preparation going on. But we only saw about 1 to 3 inches of rain here in Baltimore and surrounding areas, and of course north of the city also some 1 to 2, locally almost 3-inch amounts. But get a load of this. Some amounts up here toward New York State, even eastern Pennsylvania. 4 to 6 inches of rain, 8+ inches of rain. That's where we had deadly flooding, again, around West Point, New York, and that's extending all the way up into New England. Some of the worst that they've seen since Ida back in 2021, and in some cases it could even be since Irene several years ago. Now, you see the humidity, it's still off to our east more so with the thunderstorms. We have a cold front that's trying to work its way through. It's diffused, it's kind of falling apart, but it will introduce drier air, and it's actually already starting right now. We're at 72, mostly cloudy. For the first time in days, the dew point, that measure of moisture in the air, it's dropped out of the 70s. So you may even be able to open up the windows this evening. Take a look. We do have some clouds on the way. By early tomorrow morning, there's that stray shower chance. And as we head toward tomorrow late day, highs don't make 90. They didn't make 90 today, so we wrapped up a 7-day heat wave today. And looks like we're in the 80s again tomorrow, slightly less humid. And there's that outside chance of a spot shower. That's as our actual cold front does make it through and then falls apart. And that means it's still less humid for Tuesday and Wednesday. But, boy, the heat comes roaring back. 90 to 95. The 90s stay Thursday, Friday. Could see more rain as we head towards the weekend.
Jonathan, thanks. President Biden is in Europe, what he's doing there, and what the trip could mean for Ukraine's future. And still ahead, why you might want to pick up a Powerball ticket before tomorrow night's drawing. President Biden has arrived in Europe for a week-long 3-nation tour. The president touched down in London tonight, where he is meeting with King Charles for the first time since he was crowned. President Biden will then make his way to Lithuania for a NATO summit. Alliance leaders are expected to talk about the war in Ukraine and revise plans for dealing with Russian aggression. President Biden closes out a trip with a visit to Helsinki, where the president will celebrate Finland as the newest member of the NATO alliance. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been invited to the summit, but he is threatening not to attend if the alliance doesn't accept Ukraine as a member.
It's all a matter of political will, just to find the proper wording and invite Ukraine. It would be an important message to say that NATO is not afraid of Russia.
President Biden, meanwhile, is voicing hesitancy over the idea. In an interview airing on CNN today, he continued to pledge security guarantees, but said Ukraine needs to follow proper protocol to join.
And so I think we can work it out, but I think it's premature to call for a vote, in now, because there's other qualifications that need to be met.
The 31 members of NATO have been split on Ukraine's admittance, with the U.S. and Germany leading the effort to reject the country for now. Others, however, say it is necessary to ensure Ukraine does not lose the war to Russia. Well, the price of prescription drugs continues to soar. Look at the invisible middleman sending prices higher. Well, the cost of prescription drugs has skyrocketed, and as Full Measure Cheryl Atkinson reports, an invisible middleman may be playing a major role.
Like too many, Jamie Spada faced a grueling multi-year battle with breast cancer.
As long as she was able to try something and put in and be able to fight, she kept fighting.
But Spada's children, Gabriella and Sean Burst, say things fell apart in 2018. That's when their mother was prescribed a new medicine to try to slow her cancer. It became a dark turning point at a crucial time in her illness when somehow the prescription got held up for weeks.
They kept coming back with issues, but it would take days for them to come back that there was an issue, and then it would take days again for them to come back with an issue.
After much investigation, they blamed delays on a little-known but important link in the medicine chain, pharmacy benefit managers.
So what we learned is that the pharmacy benefit managers don't really answer to anyone.
Pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, are private companies hired by insurance sponsors like your employer to act as middlemen for prescription drugs to save money. They manage drug benefits and negotiate group discount prices with pharmaceutical and insurance companies. Dr. Christopher Vaughn is an owner of this cancer treatment center in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Unfortunately, with PBMs, there's a delay in getting access to medications, and it can be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks.
Vaughn says pharmacy benefit managers have become more controlling, dictating what medicine patients can get and when, and are increasing the cost of drugs. J.C. Scott leads the Pharmaceutical Care Management Association. He says rising drug costs aren't the fault of PBMs, quite the opposite. For example, he says hepatitis C medicine originally cost about $80,000 for a 12-week treatment, but pharmacy benefit managers quickly helped slash the price.
As soon as we got that second competing drug that did the same thing into the marketplace, and the third, then the PBMs were able to come in and begin to leverage that competition. And within the space of a year, the price of the drug, the cost of the drug was cut in half.
Scott says PBMs are working to address shortfalls. They also point to doctors who haven't modernized their own systems to speed up processing and communications. In 2018, when Spada's breast cancer prescription finally got to her home, it had been 6 long weeks. Too late, because while waiting, she'd suffered such a decline, she'd been hospitalized for the last time.
So I had to make the hard decision to tell my mom, you're never going to leave here. And so we had to make the decision to send her home on a hospice and just let whatever happened happen.
In the absence of federal regulations, New York has created a new department specifically to work on regulating pharmacy benefit managers. For Full Measure, I'm Cheryl Atkinson.
And you can watch Full Measure Sundays on Fox 45 at 10 a.m. We'll break out the brooms and the twin.
It means everything. A lot of memories in Seattle. Safeco Field, my first ever field going to as a kid. Right. You know, my dad being there, the amount of rounds of BP we've taken together, games we practiced, and it just means everything. I mean, father-son